good. You look
Just like
sharp.
one bit, just chilling out there.
Hey, we should be going live. Check the feeds.
Rock and roll. Yep, we're live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to today's daily Q&A. If we haven't met, my name's Yanni Burmeister, and below me in the middle is Richard Lellies, aka The Rig. We are head coaches to UMS and Unity Gym. And to my left, yeah, that's right. Yep, this way is Phil White from ADPT Physio. It is Physio Wednesday here at Unity Gym. That means we are talking all things related to physical performance, injury management, and whatever else is cool on the day. And yeah, welcome, Phil. How are you?
Yep, very well. I did my first ever half Ironman triathlon on the weekend and followed up by a 10-hour drive in the car back to, because it was in a different state. So, yeah, it was a good reminder in just how painful the body can get. But yeah, it was an excellent experience and learned a lot from it. So it's good.
Got a lot of balls jumping in the water after what everyone saw last week.
Mm,
I know you
yeah.
don't want to talk about it. uh,
Yep.
okay, how are you, Richie?
I'm great. Great, Yanni. Good to go
Yeah.
today.
Ready to
Let's get
rock and
stuck
roll?
into it. Yeah.
Today we're talking about the ultimate strategy for managing and avoiding injury based on a physio method or principles. And I think this is one of the most important discussions that anyone who takes their physical training seriously should tune into and listen to and hear a dozen times, because that's how long it takes for us to actually learn and action something. So let's dive straight in. But before we do, uh, big shout out to everyone watching on YouTube. I do want to remind you guys to smash that like button. I've just done it. Richie and Phil should do it too, but I know Phil's on his phone, so he probably can't. Everyone else, please, please, please do, because it does help hack the YouTube algorithm and get this content in front of more people. I also want to give a shout out to Vinnie Brown and Tim Hughes and everyone else joining in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. Please, if you're on YouTube, consider jumping over to that group. There's a link in the description of this video, and I will put a link up in the description to the in the comments to make it as easy as possible. That is where you guys get a lot of really cool perks, like our flexibility, 20-minute flexibility routine, like our 10-minute warm-up routine. These are the exact warm-up routines we use in UMS. This is the flexibility routine that everyone gets started on on their journey to amazing physical performance. And also, you get an opportunity to work with us commitment-free for 5 days in our flexibility challenge. And why would you not take up those opportunities? So jump over there, grab it. The next flexibility challenge starts on the first Monday of March, and it's a very, very fun experience. Everyone loves doing it. And also, big shout out to Christy Lovejoy. Let us know if you're on the live stream in the comments. All right, we're talking about load management, and we're going to let Phil really take this one because this is his specialty. And just for those of you who don't know Phil, working at ADPT Physio, we've partnered with him for a long time now, and we've been good friends for a long, long time. If you're new to this tribe, you probably won't know. Phil does online physiotherapy, plus he works in the clinic that we created at the old Unity Gym location. He's still there. And he has a very, very, I believe, unique and quite revolutionary method of physiotherapy, which is that he actually really keeps you exercising as opposed to encourages you to abstain from exercise to recover. And I found that was a real pain point for me working with physios in the past. They sort of have a different ethos than what we have, which is that motion is lotion. Phil actually coined that phrase. It's what I've got on my T-shirt here. I don't know if you guys saw
Didn't
that.
come up with myself, but it was one that's, it's a phrase that's been kind of thrown around because there is a bit of a shift in physiotherapy, and what I'm doing like shouldn't be unique. It's not a like it's not a wild out there thing. It really just follows the principles of how the body adapts to what you want to be able to do. So yeah, I definitely hope that it will become the norm, and then you can go see any physio on the corner of your street, and they're going to have the same
The
approach.
same, the same ethos, and that, it creates a good segue into what I wanted to really highlight today, which is the need for load management. So, how can someone still train, or, in our opinion, double down on training once they've sustained an injury?
Yeah, I think it first better start off with clarifying exactly what load management is, because obviously that if you haven't heard that term before, you might come away with a whole bunch of different ideas. But the basic idea is that with your body adapting to any sport or exercise stimulus, the right amount of stimulus will make you stronger, make you faster, make you fitter. But that same exercise at too intense a load or too quickly without enough recovery can have a negative effect. So I often sort of say, like, it's like you got to treat exercise like medicine, and then if you can overdose on Panadol and have a really bad outcome, but the right amount of medicine, the right amount of exercise is going to give you the response you want. So, but what I think has happened a lot in physiotherapy and in healthcare in general is there's sort of this tendency to totally withdraw any stimulus to facilitate recovery, when really, like, the body does need the stimulation of the muscular system, the bones, the joints, the cartilage, and the nervous system to maintain strength, maintain control, and recover. So yeah, that's kind of what load management is in a nutshell. And if we were to sort of define some terms as well, generally with load management, we talk about the idea of macro loading and micro loading. So macro loading being your big picture. So your program, what exercise you're doing in your exercise program from a week to week basis, a longer program, so a mesocycle or a microcycle, and then out to sort of a year of periodized training. So a bit of jargon there, but basically looking at that big picture. What is your exercise selection? Do you have events, or do you have races, or do you have personal best that you're trying to go for? And then that forms your macro loading. Now, if you're thinking about micro loading, it's going to be how you actually do each of those exercises. So the technique involved. There's a big difference between doing a deadlift with perfect form versus doing a deadlift with not so good form. Big difference between running on your forefoot versus running on your rear foot. So the way that you actually do each exercise is what we call micro loading, and that's going to have a big influence on how the body's loaded and how your body responds. So that's load management in a
Awesome.
nutshell.
Awesome. And this is key to anyone's journey. It doesn't matter whether you're injured or not, because what we generally say is what causes injury is piss poor load management. Like, you've done something too quickly that your body was simply not capable of withstanding. And this is essentially what exercise in the gym is all about. We had a really great discussion yesterday with one of our online coaching tribe members who trains UMS 6 days a week and has started playing competitive soccer for the first time in a while. He's a very fit and able guy. He's in the military, in the Australian Army, and he wanted to know how to structure the program, if there was any need for a change now that he was adding an additional 3 days, 2 days of training a week and one game day a week. And he was probably quite disappointed to find that I was recommending that he scale right back on his gym training, because during the season of soccer, it's very hard to train really heavy, especially lower extremity, legs, deadlifts, and squats, which everyone's used to doing at least once a week in UMS. If you're going to go and need to sprint and run around 3 days a week at the soccer training sessions and on game day. And I got this wrong when I was playing competitive soccer, and it resulted in, and I don't, of course you can't say I wouldn't have had a really bad knee injury and needed surgery. But what I can tell you is that I was taking the field in a state that was ill prepared for what I needed to be able to do on that field. I kept doing my squatting, I kept doing my deadlifting and trying to fit that in during the season. And it was just leaving me really fatigued and not in a very good prepared state. And what most people don't understand is, when you're an athlete, to manage load, you do most of your heavy lifting in off season. You don't do that during on season. It's about maintaining, but in off season, the training in the gym that you do is to raise your load capacity so that you can withstand the intensity of the season, of the game, and not get injured, lower your risk of injury, and improve those physical attributes that you need to perform at your best. And that's, part of the concept of load management. So, and a lot of people
Yeah,
get this
and I
wrong,
think the important sort of idea to look at there, and a principle that really helps, and why I'm always saying your body adapts to what you spend your time doing, and that comes down to the specificity principle, the STED principle, which is specific adaptations to impose demands. So basically, if you want to be able to achieve a goal of playing soccer competitively, then you've got to give your body the stimulus it needs to be able to do those specific movements. So running, changing direction quickly, applying force, taking like single leg balance when you have someone slide tackling you, all of these specific adaptations that you maybe wouldn't get if you're spending all of your kind of training time doing very structured, like very heavy and stationary sort of movements like a squat and deadlift. Now, I think a squat and a deadlift are some of the, they should be a part of everyone's program and they should be in there somewhere. But if you're spending most of your sort of adaptation energy, so your main sort of focus of your training going after that, and then not at all conditioning your body to running, changing direction, landing, kicking, then when you try and do this activity that, especially if you haven't played for a while, or if you're a bit older and you haven't been running around at lunchtime kicking a ball around for many years like most of us, then that's going to be so outside of what your body's adapted to do. That's when you're much more likely to get injured. And so I think just highlighting this sort of framework about thinking about injury is hopefully quite useful because I think a lot of people, and especially sort of with Instagram culture of like, it's fun to look at new exercises and sort of one-off little like kind of like trendy exercises or things or training styles, that can be a bit distracting because people sort of think like, oh, it's just I need to add in this one silver bullet exercise and I'll never get injured again. But you really got to think like, what is the bigger picture of the loads that I want my body to be able to tolerate, and what sports and exercise I want to be able to do, and then how do I and that's the macro loading, and then that might be over the course of a year if you're really working up to an event like I was for the half Ironman, now for a marathon in 6 weeks. But then you've also got to think, okay, within that now, how do I complete each of those movements so I'm moving the most efficiently and able to make myself the strongest way possible for the particular sport I'm using. So the micro loading idea. So hopefully that kind of highlights this is a pretty sort of short discussion of physiotherapy principles, and it's certainly not exhaustive, but if you take that framework of thinking about things, it kind of highlights that rehab should look, and prehab, so how to avoid injuries, should look much more like training than getting out of the gym and doing a few TheraBand
exercises with the TheraBand anchored to your door handle, which was always seemed to be the answer when I was getting
they're
treated.
useful at sometimes, but if that's all you're doing, you're not going to be prepared for many sports except for Ultimate TheraBand Championships.
That's right. And I like the analogy you use of the bucket to explain load capacity and how and I just want to reinforce that this is why we go to the gym. We go to the gym. Yes, a lot of us like the effect of looking really good with our kit off, but if you're training for performance in the gym, for strength, then you're training to build load capacity. And the more training you do, the bigger your load capacity becomes. And Phil has this bucket and water analogy. Why don't you quickly explain that? And that's what we'll wrap up on before we dive into our peak performance coaching group.
Yeah, so basically I like to kind of explain this as that every structure in your body, every system in your body, if you think about it like a magical bucket. Now it's a magical bucket because the bucket can get larger and it can get smaller. And what fills up the bucket is a whole bunch of different taps. So if you were to do, if we were to look at maybe my hamstring, for example. So if I was to actually let's look at backs because that's a really a common issue with this comes. So if people are sitting all day and they're sort of, not moving much in their slouch position, and then they drive for a long time to get home. I know there's less commuting now with COVID, but if you're doing all of that and then maybe you're doing some activities like sleeping in a curled up ball, and you're kind of giving your body lots of flexion throughout the day. That would say flexion is not inherently dangerous, but you've basically got quite a few different taps that are turning on that sort of flexion loading and that's going to be filling up your back's capacity to handle being in that flexion position. Now, if you go in and do a heavy deadlift session and you kind of break form a bit and you get into flexion, most of the time that won't be a problem at all. But if your bucket is already full from spending lots of time, and then maybe on the weekend you've just retiled your whole outdoor area, and so you've been over in this bent over position, reaching to the ground holding a load, and then playing with the kids down there. So basically, you've turned on all of these taps, so your bucket for lumbar flexion is now getting full to the brim. That if you go into a heavy deadlift section and then you go a little bit into loaded flexion past what your body's currently capable for, that can be the kind of catalyst for an injury. Whereas you watch the top athletes in the world who do deadlifts, they're all going to have a rounded back when they do it. That's not inherently dangerous, but the fact that if you've already kind of used up all of your capacity in the rest of your life, and then you come in and you do a heavy deadlift, that might be the thing that proverbially broke the camel's back. Now, so it's just a really important thing to think about, what throughout the rest of what other stresses, what other things am I doing throughout my week that might be filling up my bucket? Because often with things like back pain, things like Achilles tendinopathy, for example, if you were to do all of your exercises and then you had a physical job and you started loading it, then that might just be enough to kind of halt your recovery because you're pushing your capacity too much. Whereas what we want to try and do is gradually overfill that bucket, know which taps we can turn off, and so we can really give the prescribed stimulus to make that bucket bigger. Now, what a lot of I think injuries physios have done in the past, and chiros and doctors especially are prone to this, have done in the past with injury management, has said okay, you've got to rest for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and so while that then turns off the taps, and so you're not going to be getting that aggravation, what it does is also then means your magical bucket now has no sort of stimulus, so it's going to shrink and shrink and shrink. And then when you try and get back to what you were doing before, that same amount of loading, so that same amount of turning on the tap, is now going to massively overfill your bucket, and you become flared up and injured quite quickly. So what we want to try and do is think about, okay, what are the adaptations that we want to achieve? How can we turn off the taps that are sort of not helpful, or change the way you do things slightly so you aren't constantly overfilling your bucket? And then how do we gradually build things up so you become more resilient than ever? And so that's kind of the hopefully a useful analogy for people to think about, okay, what other factors in my life are adding stimulus to this, and how can I control that?
Yeah, well said. And I think that's a very, very nice analogy to explain this concept of load management that does confuse people. And, it must confuse people because so many people get it wrong, so many people
It's hard because
train.
human nature is tricky, because usually people get spurred into action because of a a seizure of motivation where they just can't help but get to the point where I want to make a change, and so it feels really satisfying to do a lot, and you feel like you're really making massive steps towards your goals. Whereas you got to take that approach of especially with physical goals, you got to take a step-by-step approach and not get too excited too early, because you got to remember the body is the long game. It's not doing one really hard workout's not going to make you an athlete. It's the consistency and the sustainability of your exercise practice. So yeah, it's hard with human nature to get this right, because we are prone to
doing too much,
getting excited.
Okay, we're going to dive into our peak performance group now and give them their daily dose of coaching. But before we do, Phil, I'll remind everybody, works both in clinic and online. If I know that you can't learn all there is to know about physio methods and principles and how to manage your own body and load and injuries on your own in 15 minutes. So where can people find you if they want to have a chat and potentially book in a consultation to work with you?
Yep, so if you go to www.adpt, that's adpt.physio, no .com, no .au, nothing, .physio, then you can head along and click the book online. I do have a 15-minute free video chat consultation for people who are a bit confused about what online physio is, to basically see if it's appropriate to the fit. So that would probably be the best, or otherwise, there's plenty of ways to get in contact on the website.
Awesome. There you go, guys. We will see you all tomorrow. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thanks.